All right, ladies and gentlemen, today in this conversation, I'm going to be presenting to you my age development curriculum. I'm doing this live off the cuff. Wanted to present it to you because I've received a lot of different questions, thoughts, and ideas. And right or wrong, it's what I believe in and how I want to present the information that I have in front of me. It's called the age development curriculum, and it's going to start with the technique perspective, and I'm going to show you how I do it, right? And I actually have an update that I'm going to take you guys through. And I hope this just kind of gives perspective because I've received a lot of questions or comments or thoughts or whatever, and it's all good. It's conversation. I will go ahead and tell you ahead of time, I do not have every single answer. But what I will share with you is from my experience, the success that I've had and how I've done that. And I'm going to walk you through the whole process. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you take away from this. If it's something valuable for you, great. I'm just here to try and help people make better decisions. And it's just success I've had from experience, which I'm going to be showcasing you how I've done it. So we're going to take into it now. So what you can see on the screen, hopefully, is the age development curriculum. That's the idea that we have behind this. And from my perspective, if you care about your child's development, this is what your child's team session should look like. Again, I don't have every single answer. I never have, and I never will. It's just to provide information, and it's what I've done to create success. So that's what you're going to see in a moment. Okay, so the first part, flipped? Okay, well, hopefully you guys can see it, but I'll be explaining it to you as we're going through. This is like a test. I've never done it before this way, but you'll see what it looks like in a second. So anyways, this was my old development methodology, okay? There were 6 steps of how to develop technique, okay? And it worked like this. Step 1 is core skill. That is step 1. Okay, which is basically fundamental ball skills. So this is like the general ability to manipulate the ball. So some people call it ball mastery. Some people have called it like core ver. I call it core skill. That's what I do. Yeah, I have it flipped on the camera. I might look at it a different way. We'll see how we do it. I might do a whole separate video, but hopefully you can at least get the idea behind it. Okay, now the second one is called dribbling skills and ability. So these would be things like fakes and feints, stops and starts, changes of direction, and escape moves, and that can include a complex skill, okay? And then the third one would then be the implementation of 1v1 play. And this is so important for me because what it is, or what this means is, you're practicing skills, so in core skill, and then you're practicing your dribbling skills. You then have to implement them. So this is what I do. We take players, we develop core skill, we develop dribbling skill, and then they have to go implement this into a 1-versus-1 scenario. Because what we have found is when you take a player and you teach them how to do something from a static motion, what I mean by static is no defender, like no real defender, no passive defender, and no actual defender, what happens is they don't know how to actually apply it correctly. So we call this the implementation process. So we're teaching them how to implement it. So you have the third step, okay? And then there's passing ability. This is now the 4th step. Receiving ability, this kind of goes hand in hand with 4 and 5. And then you have advanced decision making, which is the 6th step. Now, like I told you, there is an update to this. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you now how I've changed it in terms of the new process behind it. Hopefully that's going to make a little bit of sense. You'll see the update and what I've done differently from a thought process and putting it together for you. And then I'll be diving into more what the activities look like in each category, just to give you some ideas. Now, it's now 7 steps, and we've added one piece, and this is where it's going to become important. Okay, so we still have core skills. So that's, again, our basic ball manipulation, ball mastery, core ver, whatever you want to call it, to get touches on the ball. That's what the first step is, touches, core skill. Okay, that leads fundamental ball skills. The second one, again, is dribbling skill. So this is the implementation of skill. Now, when I say implementation of skill, this is very important. When a player does a skill, so a scissor, a body fake, a Cruyff, a pullback, maestro, whatever skill, you either do it to beat or escape from an opponent. Those are your 2 options, to beat or an escape from. And so they need to make sure that they learn how to use that correctly. And that's why we call it dribbling skill, and it's isolated from core skill. Okay, which leads into the third piece, like I said, the implementation of this. And in a minute, I'm going to be breaking this down in more detail. I'm just trying to provide the overview. Once you have those 3, then I call the next step basic, this is step 4, basic decision making. So you can see on screen, 4, it's in green, basic decision making. So now that they have enough core skill, they have enough dribbling skill, and they've been implementing this in a 1v1 scenario, you can then get them to start understanding the pass. This comes with basic decision making. So once they have basic decision making, understanding, you can then move into step 5, which is now passing, with step 6, which is receiving. So the proper technique of how to pass, right foot and left foot. Same thing with receiving, right? Right foot and left foot. Okay, and then the final piece ties into advanced decision making. This is now, when do I dribble and when do I pass? Simple. When to dribble, when to pass. So quick example right off the top of my head would be, if I'm dribbling the ball at a defender, I have to make a decision based on what he or she is giving me. If they are, I'm going to use the word block, you might not agree with that, that's okay. If they are blocking the dribble, that means the pass is open, so I release to make the pass. If the pass is blocked, so they're blocking the pass, I take the dribble. The player then has enough skill to be able to implement which option. That takes time, okay? So you're going to see in a moment how this all now breaks down in 1 second. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on 1, 2, 3, and then 4, okay? Now, you guys have seen, I've been posting content about the 2 and 3 cone footwork patterns. Some people haven't liked it. No problem. This is where I'm going to clarify this whole detail. Great. So I am not a fan of 2 cone and 3 cone footwork patterns. I use cones in my sessions. Almost every coach or every trainer will use cones. However, if I have a player that is extremely low level skill, so I gave an example about my wife, right? So her skill level, in my opinion, is close to the average American soccer player. She cannot dribble the ball very well. She cannot pass the ball very well. She cannot receive the ball very well. So she's lacking core skill. So because she's lacking core skill, this is where I may implement, and I have done this before, with a very low-level skilled player, fundamental ball skills, core skill, using 2 cone and 3 cone footwork patterns. However, once we start moving into dribbling ability, you will not see me ever use a 2 cone or 3 cone footwork pattern, because now I have to teach the technique of dribbling. So again, the key things of escape moves, I should start that over, fakes and feints, changes of direction, stops and starts, and escape moves, and then complex skill on top of that. So once we have enough core skill, we start teaching dribbling skill. Now, I don't have every piece of equipment. I don't always have mannequins. I don't always have poles. So what I will use, if I don't have those, is I will use a cone or cones. So if I wanted them to get volume of repetition, then they will dribble at a cone, throw the scissor as an example, or body fake, or whatever the skill we're working on is, to a cone, and then move it on, if that makes sense. And then after we're practicing this, even when we're in core skill, so if we haven't even gotten to dribbling yet and we're in core skill, we will then implement a 1v1 scenario. Because if we're practicing basic ball skills, so core skill, they need to then implement said skill. Because if they can't implement the skill, and they're just practicing what we call from a static standpoint, which means, and I'll explain that here a little bit deeper because you might not quite get what I'm saying by static. So the Croatian Football Federation, you can read their book. It's called the Croatian Football Federation Development Curriculum. It's open to the public. You just got to buy it. And it breaks down the 5 parts of training. So when it comes to development and getting players to understand the concept. So the first part is static. That means you do it without an actual defender. So they're just dribbling at a cone or visualizing it in their mind. However you want to phrase it, that's up to you. The second one becomes dynamic. You add a passive defender. So they're not live, not 100%. They're just there in front of you, and you have to deal with them being there. And then you visualize, here's my defender, here's why I have to throw my body. So example being, if I want to use a body fake, right? You have to throw the body. You have to bend the knee, drop the shoulder. So you're trying to throw it to convince the opponent to sell it to them while you're doing the movement. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So once they have that, you then continue the process. And then that's where the third part comes in, functional, where you're now going 1v1 live, or whatever the concept is, against somebody, 100%. And that's the idea that we have here, is you're going to need to have the players implement said skill. So that's why, when you can see here, The third step is 1v1 playing ability. So they have core skill and they have dribbling skill, or even if they don't have it, they're just in core skill, we still have them go do 1v1 to implement practicing those skills. Okay, hoping that makes sense. Moving on. What age do you start doing this? You need to be doing core skill as young as possible. That's just touches on the ball. So I put a couple videos out and I said, hey, players should be getting 1,000 touches on the ball. Now, there is no right or wrong answer. I'm just simply stating that, again, from my perspective, players that go get touches on the ball will help them develop skills more rapidly. It's basic math. So if you took my wife, who has very low level skills, she cannot dribble well, she cannot pass, and she cannot receive. If she went and followed, like, for example, my Developing Touch series program in my YouTube channel and followed that, okay, and then she was practicing it, let's say she got 1,000 touches on the ball a day for 30 days, she would get 30,000 touches, right? Now, some people could argue quality versus not quality. Okay, we can have that conversation to the point, but the point is starting with touches on the ball, okay? Anything that we've put out, I believe is quality, okay? That's for your choice to make, just to make sure that's crystal clear. Now, if we're gonna move forward, we're now gonna talk about step 4, which would be basic decision making. So like I said, once they have enough skill and they've learned how to implement a 1v1, so use a skill against an opponent and beat them, so they've learned how to use the body fake, and they know how to correctly throw the body to beat the opponent, then we can talk about the pass. So this is, again, my methodology. You might not agree with that, and that is perfectly fine. Just to make sure it's crystal clear. I just want to make sure people understand this because football is a game of opinions, right? I'm sharing with you my perspective where I have found success because I've done this multiple times to create players to a certain level. Now, basic decision making just ties into now they have enough skill, they can also now learn how to pass. So the basic decision making is how do you beat the opponent, right? But that might also tie into starting to learn how to pass, which you're going to see in a second. So continuing on, we have 5, 6, and 7. So 5 is passing, 6 is receiving, and then 7 is advanced decision making. I kind of broke it down, but I'll re-highlight this for you. So we look at passing ability. This is the proper form of how to pass the ball. Locking the ankle, toe up, knees bent, right? So just basic concepts of how we do this. Receiving is proper foot, correct form, right? So thought here is like, and I'll use this. I call it the front foot. Some people call it the back foot. So what I refer to is I say front foot because if somebody's playing me the ball from the left to the right, I say, hey, receive with the front foot because you want to go in this direction forward. Just an example. You might call it back foot. And that's just one detail that I use to help describe the component of receiving because you want to make sure you receive with the proper foot, with the correct form and all that to get forward. Okay, just an idea for you. And then that ties into our final piece of advanced decision making because 5 and 6 really go together, right? If you're going to pass the ball, you have to be able to receive the ball. Okay, so now once we have the concept of 5 and 6, we can then be teaching advanced decision making. And that's where I was telling you earlier. That's now when to dribble, when to pass, because there's really 3 executions a player can make: dribbling, passing, shooting. That's it. It's not rocket science. So passing, dribbling, shooting. Okay, so it's simple. And the theme behind this is which action, which technique are they going to use? So are they going to dribble? Are they going to pass? Are they going to finish or shoot? And that's where the decision has to be made. And that's why it's now called advanced decision making, because they now have the tools to be successful from the dribble, from the pass or receive. And then they have to make that decision. Am I going to dribble because the opponent is blocking the pass? Or am I going to pass because they're blocking the pass and the dribble's open? Those are the ideas that players need to have to be able to implement correctly, at least from my experience and my ideas, okay? Now I'm going to tell you why or how I came up with this, and it's going to lead into the next theme here. Okay, so somebody asked, when should this start? Core skill starts from essentially birth, in my opinion. So what I mean by birth is obviously not, you have to wait till they can start walking, right? But they can start getting touches on the ball. So I'll give you a flip example. When I was a young kid, the first things my parents told me to do when I was 3 years old and I started playing soccer, they told me to pass it and kick it. So I sat down with my parents and I said, hey, what was the first skill you guys taught me at 3? And they said, pass it, kick it. I'm like, ugh. Okay. So 3 years old, whenever they start being able to have that concept to be able to start moving, walking, you can then incorporate a ball. You want to tell them to dribble. My perspective, my opinion, dribble. Training starts at home. Pass should not be the first thing, at least from an American soccer perspective. And I'll tell you why. In American soccer, we don't have kids that are brought up through the game. So an example I gave in one of my content pieces was kids start playing soccer and they've maybe watched 1-2 professional games, like they're getting into recreational. They've maybe touched the ball 20, 30 times, if that, or maybe 100, right? So it's not a lot of times. And they're just not going to have the skill yet. And the way that I flip this is, let's take basketball, right? When kids are growing up, they have to use their hands. Usually it's more dominant one than the other. Like, for example, I can't write very well with my left hand, but I can write with my right hand. However, I played, I think, 3 months of basketball in a season when I was a kid, and I was able to dribble the ball, right? But that's just because I had enough core skill from the daily actions of using my hands. Kids, when it comes to soccer, football, don't have enough core skill because they haven't been using their feet in the same way that they need to from their hand perspective. I hope that makes sense, okay? So anyways, what you're going to see here is an example of U6, U7 training session based on 60 minutes, right? So 1 hour. I have ones that are longer as well, but I'm just giving you the perspective. And then I will add this piece. I think this is important. This is my personal belief. You may or may not agree with this. This is where I've found the most success. I believe that you can do basically everything you need in a session in an hour and a half. So if you need more than an hour and a half, from my experience, something might be off. So by off, the rest to work ratio, right? Maybe they're resting too much to working. So an example would be you have a line of 5 kids, 1 kid works for 30 seconds and then he rests for 4 minutes. Just an example. Okay. So if the work to rest ratio is good, the intensity is good, then you should be able to get everything done in an hour and a half. So I'll explain a little bit more in a second, but I want to show you this, right? So U6 to U7, 3 phases. Phase 1, we call it technical activation. This would be core skill and dribbling. That's it. There's no passing, by the way. Okay, this would be 20 minutes, including water breaks, right? So let's say you work 4 to 1. So they work for 4 minutes, go get water for a minute, bring it back. Okay, do that for 20 minutes. Okay, second one, small-sided games. And it says 1v1 or 2v1 based on the topic. Yeah, I know it's backward, guys. This is my first time doing it. So what happened was I did the camera facing me so I could still read your comments. And I'll probably do this again another day. I have all the content, so I'll do it again probably to go through it, and then you guys can have a better picture. So, but let me just get through it now since I'm halfway done. Actually, I'm more than halfway done. But point is, depending on the topic, depending if we're working on possession, right? But at this stage, I wouldn't even be working on possession. You would be creating a player surplus or unlocking a player surplus. It's really called solving. And then that would be 20 minutes. And then you would finish with a game. So the game would be, my opinion, preferably 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, or 5v5, and nothing more. In fact, if I was doing it, which I've done multiple times, I would focus on 2v2, maximum 3v3 at this age group. And the reason that I would do that is because I believe players they don't understand in America responsibility. So by responsibility, what I mean is, and the example I give is, how to explain this to you very quickly. When you have 3 players on the field, let's do 2, easier, simple math. 2 players on the field, 2 versus 2. 50% of the responsibility to win or lose is on 1 player and 1 player, right? You go to 3, it's now 33.3%. The more numbers that you add, the less engaged the kids have to be when they're playing. Okay, does that make a little bit of sense? And then I hope that makes sense at least. So keeping it moving, we want to make sure that it's 2v2 or 3v3. That's what I prefer. I gave the option up to 5v5. You're still going to see a bunch of bumblebees on the field running around together. I don't recommend that, but that's what happens. Okay, so moving forward. Sorry, last thing I forgot to add. It says on the bottom, modify as necessary based on the level of the group. So if I put it to you this way, right? In my own organization, we have 2 2014 teams. We have a 2014-1, 2014-2. Okay, the 2014-1 is very high skilled. Very high skilled. They can now go above this curriculum, so to speak. they could do more advanced training. So like the other day, they did a rondo type game where it was 2 groups, which was 5v2s, transition game. Simple enough, right? And then our other 2014 one, they're where they should be from a developmental standpoint based on the curriculum. So they're following the curriculum. So just understand context. If there's a group excelling, they can go slightly above. If they're not excelling, keep the training the same. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now let's look at the next one. This would be U8 and U9. Okay, what you're going to see is there's going to be a continuation, and I'm going to explain how and why in a second. So phase 1, technical activation, core skill, and dribbling ability. Notice I didn't say passing. Okay, phase 2, small-sided games. Okay, this would be 1v1 or 2v1. The same thing. Okay, and then phase 3, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, or 5v5. If you followed steps in 6 and 7, U6 and U7, you might be able to get away with 4v4 or maybe 5v5, where there's going to be more success because the kids have more skill. Now, you guys have probably heard me put this out as content perspective, and that's what I define, and just some of you might be new to the live right now that's happening. The average American soccer player is not on team 1. From, like, let's look at the big club perspective, what I call cash cows. They're not on team 1. They're going to be on team 2, team 3, team 4, team 5, team 6, team 7, team 8, team 9, team 10. So an example would be, I did a tournament 2 weeks ago, and one of the teams we played against was, I don't mean this disrespectfully, I'm just explaining to you that the opponent was like the 10th team from that club. Bro, it was like, you know, it was actually funny. This is not my words, it's one of the kids' words. They were like, oh, these are bots. So that means that they weren't at the level to be playing. So that's what the average American soccer player looks like from my perspective. And what happens with this is they don't have enough skill. They're not engaged enough. They haven't had the life experience, the history, the heritage, whatever word you want to use to describe it, they don't have it yet. Yes, I do know the TV is backwards, Lance. I'm going to actually do this again. The issue is that I have the camera facing me, so it's front facing, and that's why it looks like this. I didn't account for that. But I will do this again and flip it so you won't have this issue. Anyways, U8 and U9 continues the same way. Technical activation, small-sided game of 1v1 or 2v1. And then the third part is a game. Okay, very basic. It's not hard. Now, modifies necessary based on the level of the group. Let's go to the last one, U10 and U11. Now, I will add, I'm going to say this part first, modify based on the level of the group. If you have 10, so U10, this would be 9-year-olds, maybe 10 years old. U11 would be 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. If they are good enough, then you can implement passing. Right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I am of the belief, like I watched a training session, by training session, somebody sent me a video of 2013s doing a passing activity. I could see that they were technically not good enough to be doing exactly what was being asked of the coach. And I'm like, cool, but that's their business. What I'm referring to though is, I believe there is a better point of time spent on core skill, dribbling skill, and implementation of 1v1. Now, you can do whatever you'd like. That's your choice. I'm just explaining to you what I would do. And the example that I give is, parents have asked me, hey, why don't you work on this? Why don't you work on tactics? Why don't you do this? And my example always is, if you can bring me kids that can do those 7 things, core skill, dribbling skill, implementation of 1v1, passing, receiving, and then advanced decision making, bro, we're good. I can then do tactics and do all these other pieces that you're looking for. However, I'm going to use the word conscience. It might not be the right word, but the point is, my conscience won't let me do that. If I don't believe that I have enough skill from the kids, I believe they have better time spent focusing on core skill, dribbling skill, and implementation of 1v1, and then basic decision making. Okay, so U10 and U11, phase 1, technical activation. This would be core skill and dribbling ability. Step 2, small-sided games, 1v1 or 2v1, and then phase 3 game, 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5. It's the same training. Literally, it's the same thing. You modify the group based on the level. It's that simple. And because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the average player, what I call the 97%, and bring them up. Once they're brought up, then you can, got sport. Got soccer rankings. That's funny. Okay, but hopefully that makes sense, right? So we're trying to get them to a certain level. Once they have that level, you can do different things. And I'll give you a final example. So I've had relatively the same group of 2007s. Almost a year ago, we played against the St. Kitts senior men's national team. So I took them, some of them younger, but let's say 9, some of them 11, 9 to 11 years old. That's when I got all of them, trained them for, this is now their 5th year, trained them. And then a year ago, we played against the St. Kitts senior men's national team. They were preparing for the Gold Cup, and I had a mutual friend that was able to get us the game. So I have the video. If you want to see it, I can send it to you. It's on my YouTube channel. You can go there and just watch it. And we played them. And they played the U.S. men's national team 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later. And the point is, you have to focus on development. We were able to bring these kids up to a certain level. Because they got to a certain level, we were given the opportunity to play against the St. Kitts senior men's national team. The only time you get to play a senior, I didn't say youth, like U17, U19, I'm talking about senior men's national team is when players have a certain level, right? They wanted a warm-up game that wasn't like crazy hard, and we happened to be able to provide them, and we were willing to make that drive. We went down to Palm Beach. That was about a year ago. Again, it's on my YouTube channel. You can watch the whole game. Okay, we had even live commentary. Where do you stand on when to incorporate weak foot? Day one, don't even wait. Just get into it. Okay. But again, you can modify the training based on how the players are doing. Okay. So that I think wraps it up in terms of that. I will sit here for 3 minutes, 4 minutes to answer some of your questions if you have them, just to help provide information that's come in. So if you have questions, ask now. I've just taken you through the entire pieces of the curriculum. So that was fantastic. And then, like I said, I'll probably redo this because now I've noticed the screen is backwards. I appreciate you guys bringing it to me. So thank you. And let me see if I can answer your questions real quick as they come in. So weak foot, day one. I would do it day one. Don't even hesitate. 50-50. The key is you don't want a weak foot. And I'll give you an example. So I trained that Brazilian superstar, Kaiwan. Okay? His left foot is so good, he probably doesn't need a great right foot. His right foot is still good, but it's nowhere near as good as his left foot. But he is what I would call a generational talent. So if a player is a generational talent, you don't need to have 2 great feet. You should, but you don't need it. If a player is not a generational talent, they will need 2 feet. So the more that they can be 50-50, the better. You can have one dominant, like for example, my right foot is much better than my left foot. However, I had to do what I call emergency surgery to build the left foot to get it to a certain level to be able to unlock the things that I was able to achieve, if that makes sense. Thoughts on God Soccer rankings. You guess haven't seen my pieces of content. I think God Soccer rankings are a joke. And no country in the world that is serious about football uses GOT soccer rankings. When you're coaching a team and then your due spend. Coach.
When you coach a team and then do you spend any time with your team in a game situation stuff? So
got it. I see it. Okay. So Coach Ben. So yes, if the team has the level, I will do that. Or if I know that I'm going to have a really hard game, then, okay, I'll take time to do that. I believe the kids don't have enough skill. This is my personal opinion. I won't implement it because I feel like my time and their time is better spent training in a certain way to increase their skill. And I guess really the thing that I should to say about this is you have to meet the kids where they're at, right? If you have kids that are really wanting to go to a higher level and they're showcasing that, they need to be pushed. If you have kids that are what I call the average American soccer players, they're not ready to be pushed. So you got to give them and match them where they are at. So using my 2014s, we will spend, I would say probably maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, we go over tactics where we do the corner kick play or plays. We do positioning. We do functional movements to attack the goal. Whatever we're trying to work on for that week. It could even be defending. Whatever it is, we will work on it, usually once a week, which is a Friday for us. I moved this a couple years ago. I've learned that the sport is not taken seriously. Do you think there's a cultural shift that development coaches' styles will change? There's a lot of things that need to change. Obviously, I think one of the biggest challenges is, and this is why I decided to go with this curriculum, kids need to fall in love with the ball first, and then they got to fall in love with the game. We are putting too much pressure on kids that are in competitive soccer. Like if you go sit on the sideline and you just listen to the average American soccer parent, 97% have never played sport. And my parents, by the way, were average because they never played any sport at a high school level or higher. So they never played high school. So those are my parents. At one point, my parents were those joystick parents on the sideline, constantly yelling and doing things they shouldn't do. And then they were doing those things in the car where they were yelling at you the entire time, or me. So my parents were the definition at one point of the average American soccer players. We helped them level up by helping them. We happen to find a coach. This is why I keep talking about this. You have to find a coach who cares about development and wants to do the right thing. What I will say, though, is there is not a coach for the entire process. That includes me, by the way. I cannot solve every single problem. And I'll give you a flip example. If you came to me and said, Kyle, I need you to work on speed and agility. Dude, that is not my forte. I can do the bare minimum, the extreme basics of speed and agility. So if you said, okay, let's work on, making sure we have proper running form with it. Okay, I can do that. But if you're asked to do all these like footwork stuff, I cannot do that. That is not my forte. I can correct technique. I can implement those type of abilities. But if you're asking me to do certain things, there are things that I cannot do. So another example from a technique perspective that I cannot teach, my brother can, and there's probably other people that can as well, is, I forget the exact term, but that dip. So when you strike a ball and you want the ball to go up and drop, that dip, I can't teach that. I don't know how to do it. So when I teach technique, I only teach things that I know how to do. If I know how to do it personally, then I can teach you. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Can kids catch up at 11 years old? I don't know what by catch up means. If you want to explain, I can try and answer. Core is touching on ball, not leg lift and ab work. So when I say core skill, I'm talking about touches on the ball, making the ball their best friend. So you've probably heard of Corver. I do Corver. I call it core skill. I don't call it Corver. I call it core skill, but it's what I call basic ball manipulation, mastery of the ball. Make the ball your best friend. Let's see. For 2013 boys, how many training sessions a weekly? We do 3 times a week plus futsal on Sundays, so that's 4. So we do 4 days a week if we don't have a game. So good question. 3 clubs you'd recommend in the Midwest. I don't know any clubs in the Midwest that I can recommend. And I'll even give you an example. The reason why I don't recommend clubs is because there's one club in Texas that I've heard historically is fantastic. I trained a girl that played for this club, and the dad was filling me in on how horrendous it was. And I'm like, dude, this is one of the best clubs I've ever heard of in the country, and you're telling me it's this bad? That's a red flag. So that's why I don't do the recommend a club. If I know a coach, I'll make a recommendation of a coach. What type of tournaments are best? Showcase, individual, etc. What about ECNL versus EA? And I don't know what JPL is. So, I mean, if you want the honest truth would be it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter until they are 15 years old and older, because they're not getting a college scholarship. They're not being recruited unless they are a generational talent. If they're a generational talent, they will be recruited. Okay, but that's the exception to the rule. Let's see what else. The King of Florida. I appreciate that. He said the King of Florida. That's funny. I was going to say the King of the United States. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for the recommendation on the Creation Curriculum book. FCIX put on their athletic skill model book, which talks about the importance of multiple sports in youth. How do you feel about specialization in soccer early? Okay, so I don't think I'm a good guy to answer that question, and I'll tell you why. I played 1 season of basketball. I played, I think, 2 seasons of baseball. And I would say that I am the most un-American American. That used to be like my slogan, the most un-American American. Because all I've ever been involved in is soccer. I call it football, but football and futsal. That's it. Didn't do anything else. By the way, there's only sports I watch. Like, I did watch the Super Bowl, but I didn't really watch the Super Bowl. So just one example. So I don't think I'm a good guy to tell you that. I would also provide you counter arguments and say, well, a lot of the best players in the world only played ball, right? When I say ball, football. So I don't know. I don't want to dive into it because I don't have the knowledge or research to answer it. We got a new coach who shares his love of the game with the kids outside of the skill level, still being average compared to last year. The children are better athletes because they're more excited. Good. That's awesome. Steps in the right direction. The thing is that I think parents, you need to understand and grasp is this is a long game. All right. So the example I give is if I was a parent, I'm not a parent, but if I was a parent, I would be paying for my child to play, and I would be looking for development, progression, failure, struggling, challenging. Notice I didn't say winning or losing. Who cares? Obviously, I want to see my child give effort. Effort is the only non-negotiable for me. Right? Even when it comes to the kids on my teams or the kids that I train, the only non-negotiable for me is effort. If you give effort, I'm cool. Now, the effort has to match the kid where they're at a certain level. So what I mean by that is if you have a recreational player that wants to do training, they're only going to be able to give you so much output. But if you have a competitive kid that's been playing for a while, so like one example I'll give you is I've been posting a lot of his content or him playing. Issa is a 2010 that I have. He just played in an adult match a week ago. So 2010, 13 years old, playing in an adult match. We do that type of stuff. We give kids a chance to play up. Let's see. When are you coming to Illinois? Shake up things with the cash cows. I'm always down to shake up cash cows, bro. You can send me a DM. Thoughts on USA Cup in Minnesota? I don't know anything about it, so I can't answer. And that's one of the things that I will always add is like, this is my personal belief. Again, you may not agree. I don't comment on things I don't know anything about. So like, perfect example, I'm watching the Super Bowl. I don't know jack squat about American football. I keep my mouth shut. I don't talk about it. I don't know anything about it. I can't talk about it because I don't want to look stupid. Literally, I don't want to look stupid. So I won't make comments on stuff that I don't have information to talk about. It's just my personal belief. So if I were to go watch a basketball game, like let's say I go watch LeBron James, I don't know jack squat about basketball. How am I going to comment about what they're doing? Because I don't know. I can't say anything. Right or wrong, that's just my personal belief. So take that for what it is. Okay, anything else I need to answer? At 12 years old, is there overplaying at that age? That is a fantastic question. I'm glad somebody asked that. Okay, so this is my personal belief from experience. I can only tell you this is what I believe in. You may not agree, and that's okay. I believe there's a huge problem, especially in this country, with overtraining. Now, I'm going to add on to what this means. So I run a program that's in the morning. It's called Beast, okay? I set that up specifically for the morning because what I don't want is almost every single player in the program plays for a club. So that means they train in the morning, they have break, they go to school. Most of them are in virtual. Two of them are in regular school, they're in flex. And then they go to school and they go to training later. But they have time to rest their body. Now, very important, nutrition. So what I tell parents is when they ask me this question, you need to give at least 4 hours of break between, and this is a bare minimum, by the way, which is still not enough. I'm just telling you minimum. My opinion, 4 hours of break between one session to the second session. So that means you finish the session at, say, 2 o'clock. You have a 4-hour break until 6 o'clock. So that means they're off the field, 2 o'clock. They're able to rest. They're able to eat a good meal, not freaking fast food. I was going to swear, but no fast food, no junk, no soda. You can't be doing double sessions and putting crap in the player's body. They will completely break down. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. I just started my coaching license to look at what they have or provided a training session resource. It's actually crazy because it really makes sense to do. I can, again, give you my experience. I'm not a fan of the U.S. soccer licensing platform. That's just my personal belief. I don't believe it teaches grassroots. We're actually in the process of building our own. And I'm working with a couple high-level people to do that, higher than me. So I think you'll be excited to hear what's coming shortly from a coaching education perspective in that resource. Practice, training, game ratio. I mean, let's say 4-to-1, 5-to-1. As a high school, all other sports completely agree. Too many kids are overtrained. Agreed. High school coach, yes, they are for sure. With Trouts around the corner, how do you handle dropping players not keeping up with but show interest? You 11 girls. How I would deal with that would be very simple. I would say, listen, well, I would go talk to the parents. Hey, love your kids. Fantastic. Great work ethic, obviously, because they keep wanting to improve. I need your help. And they're going to be like, what do you mean you need my help? Well, it's quite simple. I want to keep your daughter on the team. It's going to be a challenge, though, unless I get your help. And they're like, oh, my God, what do you mean? Well, she needs more skill. So have her start with 1,000 touches on the ball. Give them a number, right? Just pick something off the top of my head. Like I have a program on my YouTube channel. It's called the 2,500 Touch Challenge. I think it's great. I think you can go get a bunch of touches. You can get 2,500 touches in 20 minutes. So you do the math. That's going to explode a kid's ratio pretty quickly. So that's it, guys. I actually got to go to training here in about 2 minutes. I will probably do this again because obviously the board was flipped. I apologize for that. So I didn't account for that when I was putting it together. But I think it was a good run. I think most of you got the value that you're looking for from this. Hope it makes sense. See you guys soon. Keep working hard. And as always, I'll do the best I can to help anybody. And ciao, guys. If you haven't, please make sure you go to my YouTube channel and smash that subscribe button. I have a bunch of content on there that probably half of you haven't even seen yet. And last piece is, if you are a parent that truly wants to level up, you really want to level up, I recommend you take the 3% Parent Diploma. Go earn it. It's not a handout. You got to go earn it. Link in bio. Okay? You guys have a great day, great night. Tell your kids you love them, and make sure you ask the question, are they having fun? Okay? Ciao, guys. See you later.